This morning, we are going to conclude this series. It seems like it's been going on for a number of months now, on Exodus. I say conclude. In reality, when you get to the place where we're at this morning, it's really the commencement. This isn't finishing anything. God's just getting ready to do His work in Israel, the people of Israel that He saved out of Egypt, out of slavery, and now He is going to do something very significant with them. Jason and I have compared this to a marriage, and where God has wooed the people away from their slavery, their existence prior, and has brought them into a relationship with Himself. There has been a ceremony, there has been this experience of engagement, there has been some understanding. In other words, this is what marriage looks like, and God spelled it out to the people of Israel because they were ignorant. And this morning, we're going to look in a few minutes at a honeymoon experience, a honeymoon gone very, very bad. Now, with the children here, and I'll be talking to you specifically in just a few minutes, so be patient, all right? And we're going to come to this place of the honeymoon right after we do this. Now, I have to say this at the outset. What Jason did to me, and I know he'll be looking at this message and get this message, but what he did to me is to say, okay, we have 2 messages to go, and the 1st of September would be a good place to start the new series. So why don't you preach the 2 messages on August 31st, and they're really not interacted, but just go ahead and so that's what we're up against this morning. To be quite frank with you, at some point in this message, you're going to go, wait a minute, there's no segue here. There's no bridge. You're just going to have to go with it. I'm just telling you in advance. Okay, the commencement. One of the reasons why this honeymoon is going to go very, very badly is because a bride and groom must make accommodations. And in that relationship, there needs to be space. And I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute and even illustrate it. I want you to read with me the passage of Scripture, Exodus chapter 32, 1 through 5. Just read silently with me. And this will appear to have nothing at all to do with the space. But trust me, there will be a cause for it. The situation is this. The people of Israel are in the plains of Sinai. Moses has gone up onto the mountain to talk with God, and he's had this 40-day, 40-night devotional experience with God on a plane that none of us could ever even imagine. And God has given to him instructions for the marriage. This is how the marriage needs to operate. We call them 10 Commandments or the law, and there are more than 10. But basically, they're saying, if you love me, this is how you're going to demonstrate this. And it's not a thing like God is ordering them to love Him. He's just saying, here's a way to show this. And then while Moses is on the mountain getting these commandments, this is what happened. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So Aaron said to them, "Take off the rings of gold that are in the ears of your wives, your sons, your daughters, and bring them to me." So all of the people took off the rings of gold that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord." Now, this honeymoon is going south really, really quickly, if you want to compare it to that metaphor. The God that wooed them is no longer the God that is the focal point of their attention. We'll talk more about that as well. Here's a dilemma, and here's what leads up to the problem of the day. God is invisible. Making room for an invisible God defies the imagination. It defies the understanding. And so when Israel is confronted with an invisible God who delivers them from Egypt, who does very visible things, but has never shown Himself, now they are into a thing called syncretism. Basically melding 2 religions together, one that worships visible gods that they grew up with in the land of Egypt, and the one of Judaism, which worships an invisible God and chooses to reveal Himself through very, very obvious means. They've seen plagues. They had been delivered through the Red Sea. They saw the Egyptian army drown. They saw manna fall from the sky when they were hungry, and they saw water come out of a rock that Moses provided for them. And he led them through the wilderness to this place called Sinai. So he did some very visible things, but as a God, he remains invisible. Now, how do you make room for an invisible God? Well, God had a plan for this, and we're going to look ahead you got to trust me on this one. You can look it up later. Numbers chapters 2 and 3. And in Numbers 2 and 3, God says, when you camp out, when you millions, literally 2+ million people camp out on the way to the promised land, and while you're at Sinai, and every time we stop, you need to arrange your tents in this fashion. And on the screen, you'll see just in a minute here, if I got my, absolutely, right on cue, thank you. You'll see a very vivid demonstration of that arrangement. The ants, it looks like, 2 million people, their tents, outside of, and very, very orderly, by tribe, around the center, the invisible God, check this out, in that tabernacle, that movable worship place, that big tent, there is a thing called an ark. And it wasn't much bigger than an organ, very unimpressive in terms of size, but on the top of the ark were 2 angels facing each other, and in between those angels, God said essentially, that's where I'm going to live. That's where I'm going to be. You can't see me? That's where I'm going to be. It's called the mercy seat. How appropriate is that? And so on that piece of furniture, in between the angels, this area designated for God. But look where it is in configuration with the tents around. Where is room for God in the nation of Israel? Right smack dab in the center. He wasn't going to be out front to lead them. Oh, I know, pillar of fire and all that. He wasn't going to be up on the mountain. He wasn't going to be up. He wasn't going to be ambiguously omnipresent. He was going to have a focal point in Israel at the very center of their existence. That's where he wanted to be. Now, I could take a parenthesis here and run with that for a minute and say, have you made room in your life for God? I won't, but I could. And then I would ask, where? Is it just like on the fringes? Or is it like ambiguously out there? Or is he at the very core, the very center of your life? Just ask him. At this time, I would like for the children, adults take a break for a minute, children to come up here and sit on the front row, and I've got a message just for you. Nobody else will be listening in, it's just you and me. Because you don't have junior church today, so I felt sorry for you to have to listen to me for like 30 minutes. So come on, don't be shy. Do you know each other? Do you know each other? Can you get acquainted here a little bit? Huh?
I'm a kid.
Absolutely, so am I. Welcome. Anybody else? All right, we got one. Come on down. I feel like a game show host. All right. Now, my wife said I should have had an object lesson for this message this morning, but you're going to find out why I don't. If you can imagine a cupcake, not a problem, right? That's why I didn't want to have an object lesson, because if I had a cupcake, you can see that would be a problem. So if I have a cupcake, and I've seen people do this, that they take they lick the frosting off the cupcake first, because that's the really sweet stuff, that's the good stuff, right? And then if the cake is good, you might finish it, or you might give it to your little brother or something. But the frosting is the good stuff. Now, if you could think of your life as a cupcake, just saying, go with me here. I told you I'm a kid too. And you think of your life as a cupcake, and you put a little Jesus on the top of it to make you look good. Maybe you go to church, and you do some good stuff, and maybe you go to like Bible club in the summertime when they got the 5-day clubs going, and you put a little Jesus on top of your life. That's not great, because you got all that dry cake underneath it. It's not as good. But years ago, I had a friend. I wish I had some of these. I still can taste them. She invented a cupcake, and she actually won a big award for this, like a lot of money. And the cupcake was dark chocolate and had glaze on the top of it. Inside, a dollop of cream cheese. You think, Will, it's working for you? Yeah? Okay. You can imagine that, right? if you can imagine your life as a cupcake, you don't want to think of Jesus as something on the surface, just when you need him, like a first aid thing. You want to think of Jesus at the very center of your life. You know how that works? Let me help you out. Ask yourself the question, would this make Jesus happy? Whatever it is, Teacher comes into the room, go, put away your books, take out a sheet of paper and a pencil, we're going to have a pop quiz. You go, oh no. What would make Jesus happy at that point? You don't know? He says, rejoice always, because I'm about to learn some stuff that maybe I would not have learned before, like what I don't know. Just saying. What if you see a bully, picking on somebody, and, they're in tears in the hallway, and you go, man, what would Jesus like me to do on this one, And you ask him, all the time, just ask him, what would Jesus want me to do at this point? Does that make sense to you? Cream cheese. Make it the very center of your cupcake, not just something on the top that you can lick off. You can go back there and sit down, or you can stay here. Doesn't matter to me. All right. Thank you, kids. That's what God wanted of Israel, the very center of their lives, as a nation, but also as individuals. I talked to a lady this week, a young lady that was about ready to celebrate her first year anniversary. She made the comment she was so glad the first year was just about over with. Her husband was not there to give his side of it, but she said, I discovered how selfish we really were. And she began to explain. And those of you who have been married for some time, you go, well, first of all, I had to weigh in that after the first year, it's not all smooth sailing from there. Got news for you. And there could be another problem, here and there along the way. But she said, we entered this thing so selfishly because we both brought households. We had furniture, and we had cars, and we had debts, and we had aspirations, and we had habits, and we had ways of doing things, and we had desires. And we bring that into the household, and now we end up not with a marriage, but with two entities clashing in our house. And Israel was basically in that same boat. And that's why God went to such great lengths to spell it out to them. This is what you're going to need to be like. This is what I expect of you. And so that's what we just read about. The honeymoon gone very, very badly. I mean, the birdseed was still on the ground, or the rice, and the strains of the recessional were still in the air. And Israel was already being unfaithful to her new groom. Now, I'll have to say this at the outset. I told Jason, when he asked me to do this, I was thinking about speaking to adults, speaking adult language, being rather forceful on this, but obviously I have to be age appropriate this morning, and the adults are just going to have to use their imagination. The horrors of unfaithfulness on the honeymoon. Let it simmer for a minute. What would you do? Does homicide come to mind? It did to God. Yeah. We're going to read in just a minute what he thought he might do and solve this problem. The next verse on the honeymoon is over before it begins. And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. This honeymoon is all the way on the rocks. It is history. Any idea of camaraderie or of fellowship or of unity at this point is all gone. Now, the activity that they are entering into is a violation of everything that is God. Everything that is God. They violated 4 of the first 3 commandments before Moses ever got down the mountain. I know, that was not a misstatement, nor am I bad at math. 4 of the first 3 commandments. What's the first commandment? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. How'd they do on that one? Nah, check it off. Gone. The second one. Thou shalt not make a graven image. They messed up that one. And then the second part of that second commandment, you shall not bow down to any graven image. And they butchered that one. They had an altar to a cow. Really? So much for the invisible God. And the third commandment, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. God says, I don't play well with other gods. I'm a jealous God. Nobody is my rival. Nobody. And bam, 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 before Moses ever broke the commandments, God had etched them with his finger in stone, and they are toast. Now, it's not just about the commandments, though. They're not really a checklist. The commandments are about the character of God, the character of God that he was explaining to his new bride. This is what I'm really like. And they're missing the point entirely. God said, if I wanted an image, I would have provided it, and I will. Here's a puzzling little verse from the New Testament. Describing Jesus, Paul said, he is the image of the invisible God. Those of you who are philosophical in nature just blew a gasket. He is the image of the invisible. How does the invisible have an image? You know what I'm saying? But God says, I will provide for you all the image you need to know in the Messiah. You got to be patient. In the meantime, I'm an invisible God, and I will not be represented or misrepresented by a tangible, finite thing, especially a cow. I mean, come on. Those are the commandments that they broke. Moses' euphoria was interrupted when God gets this message. The next few verses, and the Lord said to Moses, go down for, this is kind of curious, I don't even know where to go with this, but God says to Moses, go down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. Now, I don't picture God as passing the buck, blame shifting too much, but there's definitely some pronoun issues here. Your people you brought out of the land of Egypt, Moses. Guess what they're up to? They have turned aside quickly out of the way that I commanded them. They have made for themselves a golden calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. So a lot of people are not taking credit for getting the people of Israel out of the land. Now, having said that, I have another picture up here that is kind of odd. I'm not an art major by any stretch of the imagination, but I Googled Aaron's graven calf or something like that. And among other things that were pretty laughable and gaudy in some cases, I came up to this one and I thought, wait a minute, I don't see the golden calf anywhere. And I think if you blew it up, it would be somewhere down in the masses. But the point was made. Contrast that to the picture you saw before. Where is God artistically in this picture? Is he in the center of their existence? Is he in the center of their awareness as a nation, as a people? Not so much. If I understand the artist, he's off on the mountain away. And that is exactly what the problem is with this honeymoon gone bad. They have not made room for this God in their lives, in the center of their existence. Instead, they have relegated him to a place away. What's a groom to do? I don't know. I've been a groom, and I can't even, in my wildest imaginations, which I won't allow to go there, I can't imagine unfaithfulness on the honeymoon. But I would forgive a groom who took some pretty stringent measures to correct that situation. Wouldn't you? I mean, that is devastating. The Lord said to Moses, the next few verses here, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now, therefore, let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, in order that I may make a great nation of you. God, yeah, God, you go, because those people have messed up big time. They deserve what you're about to give them. Now, that's my advice to God. He didn't ask for it. Moses weighs in, and I will summarize these next few verses here. Moses weighs in, he says, God, there's two reasons why that's not going to work. One, you redeemed people, you got people, emancipated people out of slavery in Egypt. What are the Egyptians going to say when they hear that you pulled them out into the desert and killed them? Your reputation isn't going to be really great. and that's important to you. The second reason is 3 guys: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. You promised on your own being that you would make of those guys a great nation, that you would put them into a promised land, that you, through them, would bless the entire population of the planet. Now, I don't know that this conversation took place quite like this. Moses is writing this. I'm not calling him a liar. I'm just saying, here's the chore he was faced with. Explaining a conversation that he had with God in terms that human beings could understand it. Yeah, that's a chore. And so he just spells it out in this dialogue, and he said, I think this is pretty descriptive of God's sentiments. God knew good and well he had promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all those things. He knew good and well that he couldn't go back on his word. And so in order to convey that to the reader, Moses says, here's how this happened. Maybe he was on an ego trip giving God advice and all in this situation. And the last verse, and the Lord relented of, I know I'm throwing you a loop back there, but I'm looking at the clock and you and this and that, and it's going to come together eventually. The Lord relented from the disaster that he had spoken of bringing to his people. And so that disaster is averted. But I didn't answer the question. What's a groom to do in this situation? I'm going to take you by description and to a few verses in the book of Hosea. Many of you have not read Hosea recently, but let me give you a little background to it. Hosea was a prophet to the nation of Israel, actually by this time known as Judah, and here's why. After about 40 years of wilderness wandering and 400 years of being under the judges, Israel got a king. They became a monarchy. And then there was a civil war about 3 kings later, and they divided in the middle. Well, 10 verses 2. The northern kingdom known as Israel, the southern kingdom known as Judah. Israel was taken into captivity by the Assyrians far longer, maybe 150 years before the southern kingdom, Judah. And during that time, there was a prophet by the name of Hosea. And he could see that the southern kingdom was also in deep trouble. Morally, they had gone south. They were into idolatry again. And they had turned against God. And he knew that God wouldn't put up with that indefinitely. And he saw on the horizon, figuratively and literally, a nation that was rising up in power. They had beaten up on Assyria, which made them a formidable enemy, Babylon. And he saw Babylon salivating over Israel. And he saw that this was coming rapidly, and God said, here, they're not listening to you, Hosea. I'm paraphrasing a bit here. Please decipher from what I'm paraphrasing in the actual text. But he says, we need dire measures here. Your message isn't getting out there. So here's what I want you to do. Go to a place of prostitution and find yourself a bride. Go downtown. Get yourself a bride. Say, what? He says, yeah, it's going to get complicated. So Hosea went down, picked out a lady. Her name was Gomer. I kid you not. I mean, how many of you go, whoa, Shazam? But her name was Gomer, and she married him, and he loved her, and he gave her 3 children, all of whom had very negative names, like not my people, to convey to the children of Israel, to the Jews, that God is about done with them, to convey to them that they had essentially been unfaithful to him, and now he was fed up. Now here's what happened. This is where things get really ticklish. Gomer went back to her previous lifestyle. Yeah, after what Hosea had done for her, emancipating her from that kind of slavery, if you want to call it that, and it is, from that kind of degradation, and he gave her a life, and he gave her children, and she left him and went back. The picture of Israel is starting to come through, isn't it? And Israel turned from her groom, and went back to the slavery of sin. And God told Hosea, here's what I want you to do, man. Go find Gomer. Take some cash. Go buy your wife. The wife that belongs to you. Go buy her. She got a pimp, Go pay money for your wife. All that to tell Israel, this is what you've done to me. This is what you did to your God. This is what you did to your groom that loves you, that wooed you, that emancipated you, that gave you life and meaning and purpose and direction and promises that are over and above. And this is the way you treated your God. But guess what? What's a groom to do? The groom is going to go back and get her again. His love for her is so unwavering. It is so unconditional that God is going to go back after Israel time after time after time. That's what a groom is to do. Let me read you a poetic conclusion to the story of Hosea. I don't think this is up there. Yes, it is. Thank you. And I will betroth you to me forever. This is after all the stuff. I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice, in steadfast love and in mercy. If nothing ever would have happened between the two, nothing negative, this would be a great love letter, wouldn't it? But given what all has taken place, come on. I will betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord. And in that day I will answer, declares the Lord. I will answer the heavens, and they shall answer the earth. And the earth shall answer the grain, the wine, the oil, and they shall answer Jezreel. Now, there's more to this, and I'm not going to explain it, but that was the name of one of her kids who was very, very negative. And I will sow her for myself in the land, and I will have mercy on no mercy, and I will say to not my people, you are my people, and he shall say, you are my God. You don't have to understand all that goes on there, but it does have a happy ending, doesn't it? You are my people. After all that we've been through, you are my people. You're my bride. And the people will respond, we are yours. You are my God. Some questions that I want to pose to you and to me this morning. Have you willingly placed God in the center of your life, first of all, or has he been relegated to the suburbs? Start there. Don't move to any other questions until that one has been resolved. One of the problems is that we have pieces of our lives. What aspects of our lives, of your life, tend to be God-less? What ones do you reserve for yourself? Your business, your social life, your love life, your avocation, your money. You got these parentheses. God, I'm all yours. Got this little pocket here that's not really, I don't want you there. But what aspects can you identify to say these are God-less? Don't want him around. Have the golden calf experiences of your life been totally resolved? You're a rare being if you come here this morning with no golden calf experience. When you have never said, I will do my own thing, God, thanks so much. See you later, don't call me, I'll call you. You're a rare Christian if that's your experience. Most of us, maybe all of us, have had a golden calf in our lives. The beauty of that is that there's a loving, forgiving, merciful God out there. And he's inviting us to come. He's buying us back, so to speak, like Gomer. And he's saying, if you confess, I will forgive. I got that in writing. Are you living a reconciled life today? Because you can. No matter what you've done, that can be history, and you can live a totally harmonious, reconciled life with the holy God. Think about it. That is over the top. And I just want to ask you, are you living that reconciled life right this minute? If not, I really strongly suggest that you come to that verse in 1 John 1:9 that says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive. Because we're going to take part in communion here. A ceremony, a commemoration of the death and resurrection of Christ. How else do you celebrate a death if there's not a resurrection right, next to it? And we're going to celebrate. We're going to commemorate. But it's for those who are living a reconciled life. Because there's a danger here that if I'm harboring and protecting and defending sin that I know is there, while I take part commemorating the sacrifice for that sin, there's some incongruence there, isn't there? But that's easily resolved by confession. And in the next few seconds, you can enter into a newly reconciled life and take part with us and celebrate with us in the communion service.